Hi, welcome back. This is an original Tales first story about family unfairness and the moment the tables turn. Let's begin.
My parents told everyone in town that my 12-year-old is a thief. She lost all her friends and got kicked off her school teams. She should learn respect, my mom said. So I made one call to my grandpa's former lawyer, and their lives started to unravel. I was only gone for a week, a mere 7 rotations of the earth. Yet as I pulled into the gravel driveway of my childhood home that evening, the air felt different, heavier, as if the gravity in this specific zip code had intensified just to crush the air out of my lungs. 7 days, 1 suitcase, 1 necessary work trip that I couldn't reschedule, and 1 set of grandparents who had practically begged, with hands clasped and eyes shimmering with feigned longing, to have some special bonding time with their granddaughter. I should have known better, really. For in the lexicon of my mother, bonding is merely a euphemism for reprogramming, and quality time is code for an inspection of one's flaws. To her, a child is not a burgeoning soul, but a puppy that has yet to be broken to the leash, a creature that needs to stop peeing on the rug of her pristine existence. The porch light was on, casting a jaundiced yellow glow against the siding, and the curtains were drawn tight, sealing the house like a tomb. Everything looked normal, perfectly, chillingly normal, in that specific way a house looks right before you walk into a room and realize you are the only person who didn't get the script for the play being performed. My heart gave a strange syncopated thump against my ribs as I killed the engine. Silence rushed in to fill the cabin of the car, but it wasn't peaceful, and it was the quiet of a held breath. I walked to the door, my keys jingling, a sound that seemed too loud in the oppressive dusk. My mom opened the door before I could knock, wearing that bright porcelain smile she saves for company and the vicar. It is a smile that doesn't reach her eyes, a baring of teeth that says, "See, everything is perfect, nothing is wrong, and if something is wrong, it is definitely, categorically, not my fault." "Sarah," she sang, her voice pitching up an octave, vibrating with an artificial sweetness that made my teeth ache, like biting into pure sugar syrup. We were suddenly in a commercial for Family Values, and she was the director. My dad appeared behind her, a shadow in the hallway, wearing his usual expression, neutral, patient, slightly bored. The look of a man who hasn't had an original thought since the late 90s and takes great pride in his consistency. And then my daughter stepped into view. The air left the room. She didn't run to me. She didn't bounce on the balls of her feet, vibrating with the energy of 1,000 stories she'd saved up to tell me. She didn't launch into the 100-mile-per-hour report she usually delivers after being away from me for longer than a grocery store checkout line. She just stood there, quiet. Her eyes were fixed on the floorboards as if counting the grain. She was holding her dance bag with white-knuckled desperation, clutching it like it was the only anchor keeping her from floating away into the ether, or perhaps the only shield she had left against the world. My stomach tightened, twisting into a cold, hard knot. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, forcing my voice to stay light, fighting the tremor that threatened to betray my sudden panic. "I missed you." She stepped forward and hugged me, but it was all wrong. It was stiff, mechanical, the way one hugs a distant relative at a funeral. A gesture of obligation, not affection. Her small body felt rigid, coiled tight with a tension that no 12-year-old should ever carry. My mom patted my arm, a gesture that felt more like a dismissal than a comfort. "She's just tired. Big week." I pulled back and looked at my daughter's face. Her eyes were dull, emptied of their usual spark, in a way that didn't match simple fatigue. It was the look of a flame that had been smothered. Her mouth was set in that tight, wavering line kids get when they are trying very hard not to cry, not to talk, not to do anything that might crack the dam, holding back a reservoir of sorrow. "Thanks for watching her," I said automatically, the words tumbling out on a reflex loop. Because I was raised in a family where you say thank you before you know what you're thanking them for, where politeness is the currency used to pay for silence. Oh, of course, my mom said, smoothing her apron. Family takes care of family. Then she smiled wider, a beatific expression, as if she'd just recited a holy scripture rather than a platitude. My dad nodded once, a sharp, distinct motion. Drive safe. And that was it. No details, no updates, no, hey, just so you know, there was a bit of an incident. Just the fake smile, the neutral nod, and my daughter standing there like she'd aged 5 years in 7 days. I told myself to wait until we were in the car. To wait until the heavy oak door had closed and severed the connection between us and that house. We got in. I started the engine. The interior light clicked off, plunging us into the intimate semi-darkness of the vehicle. The world narrowed down to the dashboard glow and the quiet, rhythmic hum of the tires on the asphalt. My daughter stared out the window, watching the suburban landscape blur into streaks of light and shadow. I took a breath, measuring it carefully. So, I started, keeping my eyes on the road. How was it? How are you doing? Fine, she said. The word came out flat, practiced. A stone dropped into a deep well. Not fine. It was the fine of a soldier reporting for duty after a massacre. I tried again, casually, masking my growing dread, like you do when you don't want to startle a wounded animal. Did you sleep okay? Yeah. Did you have fun with Grandma and Grandpa? Yeah. 3 yeahs. Monosyllabic walls being erected between us. She was answering a survey she hadn't agreed to take. I swallowed around the lump in my throat. How's dance going? You have a performance in a few days, right? The big solo? She didn't respond right away. The silence stretched, elastic and tense. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror, though I could only see the outline of her cheek. Her hands were clenched around the strap of her bag so tightly, her knuckles were pale. Then, she whispered, I'm not on the team anymore. I felt like someone had slammed the brakes inside my chest, throwing my heart against my ribs. What do you mean you're not on the team anymore? They kicked me out. The words were so matter-of-fact, devoid of inflection, as if she were telling me the current temperature or the color of the sky. My grip tightened on the steering wheel until the leather creaked. Why would they kick you out? She didn't answer. She turned her head further away, pressing her forehead against the cool glass of the window. Sweetheart, I said, softer now, gentler, because something was breaking inside me, a jagged realization that something catastrophic had occurred. Why? Silence. The road stretched ahead of us, ordinary and calm, indifferent to the tragedy unfolding in the passenger seat. The streetlights flickered past, rhythmic pulses of illumination that revealed nothing. I tried again. Talk to me, okay? You can tell me anything. I'm your mom. I'm on your side. She swallowed, the motion visible in her throat. I don't want to talk about it. That sentence landed heavier than, they kicked me out. My daughter talks about everything. She narrates her life. She talks about the weird buzzing sound the fridge makes at 3 a.m. She talks about a teacher's mismatched earrings. She talks about the way a kid in math class breathes too loud through his nose. When she says she doesn't want to talk, it means she is holding something that burns, something too hot and radioactive to touch. We drove in silence for a while, the miles ticking away. And in that silence, my brain did what it always does when it's terrified. It tried to fix things with normalcy. It reached for the mundane, hoping that if I could just find the right familiar thread, I could pull her back to herself, stitch the wound closed before I even saw it. So, I said lightly, feigning a cheerfulness I did not feel, do you already have a present for Sophie for her birthday on Saturday? We could stop and pick something up tomorrow. My daughter's jaw tightened, a muscle feathering in her cheek. I'm not going, she said. I blinked, momentarily confused. What do you mean you're not going? You've been talking about Sophie's birthday for weeks. It's the pool party, right? I'm not invited. The words were small, barely a whisper. The meaning was enormous, a landslide burying us both. I felt my pulse throbbing in my throat, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Why aren't you invited? She didn't answer. She stared at the window, the streetlights passing like slow, blinking eyes judging us. I kept my voice calm because that's what you do when your child is in freefall. You don't scream, you don't weep. Like you become the ground. You become the bedrock, so they have something to land on. But inside my head, a siren was wailing. Who is this kid? Where is my child? What happened in a week? We got home. The house was cool and dark. I turned on the lights, pushing back the shadows, and went straight to the kitchen. I made dinner because mothers are ridiculous, resilient creatures who will saute vegetables and boil pasta while their entire world is collapsing around them, because bodies need to be fed even when souls are starving. My daughter sat at the table. She ate a few bites, pushing the food around her plate like she was doing it out of obligation to gravity rather than hunger. No talking, no complaining about the green beans, no asking for dessert. After a few minutes of the fork scraping against ceramic, a sound that grated on my nerves like a file, I set my own fork down. Okay, I said, abandoning the pretense. What happened? She stared at her plate, her eyes fixed on a singular noodle. Her shoulders rose and fell once, a massive shuddering heave, like she was trying to keep everything locked inside a box that was rapidly losing its structural integrity. Then her face crumpled. Tears came fast, violent, and hot, the way they do when a kid has been holding them back for days, storing them up until the pressure is unbearable. Grandma said I was stealing, she choked out, the words wet and jagged. My skin went cold, ice water in my veins. What? She wiped her face with the back of her hand, furious at herself for crying, furious at the world. She told people I'm a thief. My mind tried to reject the sentence, like it was a foreign language I hadn't studied. Why would Grandma say that? My daughter sucked in a shaky breath, her chest hitching. Because of Belle. Of course, Belle, my sister Vanessa's daughter, the family's crowned princess, the golden child of the golden child. My daughter kept talking now, the words spilling out in a torrent. Once the dam broke, the water had to go somewhere, and it was flooding the kitchen. Belle couldn't find her shoes, she said, her voice trembling, pitching high with distress. Her competition shoes, the special ones with the reinforced toes. She needed them, and she was supposed to go on stage, and she couldn't find them. She started freaking out, screaming and throwing things, and then she said, I took them. My daughter's hands clenched into fists on the table, pounding softly against the wood. I didn't. Mom, I swear I didn't touch them. I didn't even go near her stuff. I was in the other room stretching. I leaned forward, covering her fists with my hands. Okay, I believe you. And then what? She swallowed hard, a painful gulp. We got home, and later, Grandma and Grandpa came into my room. I pictured it instantly. My parents looming over my child in a bedroom that wasn't hers. In a house where adults were always right and kids were always guilty by default. The interrogation, the pressure. They said I stole them, my daughter whispered, looking down at our joined hands. They said I did it to sabotage her performance because I was jealous. Because I wanted to outshine her. Her voice cracked on the word outshine. I didn't, she said again, a plea to the universe. I didn't do anything. My heart was pounding a war drum against my sternum. What did you say to them? I said I didn't do it. I said I didn't know where they were. I thought I was just going to be grounded or yelled at. She gave a small broken laugh that contained zero humor. They said I was grounded, and then they went to school. My mouth went dry, tasting of dust and ash. They went to your school. She nodded. tears sliding down her cheeks, dripping off her chin onto the placemat. They told people. They told the coach. They told Sophie's mom. They told everyone. I could barely breathe. The room was spinning. What did they tell them? That I stole Belle's shoes, she sobbed. They said that I'm a thief, that I can't be trusted. I stared at my own kitchen wall, staring at the patterned wallpaper, as if it might explain how my parents became people who could do this to a child. How they could take a confused, frightened girl and paint her as a villain to the entire community. And the shoes? I asked, my voice tight, coiled like a spring. Did they ever find them? My daughter wiped her face, shaking her head. They said they found the shoes later, back at their house, in the hallway by the front door. In the hallway? Yeah, they even showed them to me. But I didn't see them find them. They just held them up later and said that meant I must have put them there to hide them. They said I must have snuck them back. She looked up at me, eyes wide, pleading for salvation. Mom, I never took Belle's shoes. I never touched them. I don't know how they ended up back at the house, but it wasn't me. I believed her. I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to weigh the evidence. I believed her the way you believe gravity exists, the way you believe the sun will rise. I know my daughter. I know her heart. And then she swallowed and stared at the table edge, her voice dropping to a whisper so quiet I had to lean in to hear it. They kicked me off the team, and everyone started acting like... She searched for the word, then lowered her eyes, defeated. Like I'm not safe. Like I'm a disease. A few seconds passed, heavy and thick. Then, a quieter still, Sophie won't talk to me anymore. I stopped what I was doing without meaning to. The dish towel I had picked up hung half-folded in my hands. Sophie wasn't just a name. Sophie was the birthday on Saturday. Sophie was the girl who had been in our kitchen 100 times, leaving hair ties on the counter and laughing like she belonged here. Sophie was her best friend. Sophie, I said, the name tasting bitter. My daughter nodded once. She kept looking down. She said, Sophie's mom told her that if I'd do it to Belle, I'd do it to anyone. She said it like she was repeating a line she'd been forced to memorize. No tears now, just the words placed carefully on the table between us like poisonous artifacts. I set the dish towel down. Not fast, not dramatic, just flat, a decisive punctuation mark. Okay, I said, and my voice steady, a calm sea before a hurricane. Thank you for telling me. Then I picked up my phone. My hands were not shaking. They were cold, deadly still. I called my parents. My mom answered on the second ring, cheerful, oblivious, or perhaps just acting. Hi, Sarah. Did you make it home all right? I didn't bother with greetings. I didn't bother with the prelude. What did you do? There was a pause, a beat of silence where the cheerfulness faltered. Then my mom sighed, a long, suffering exhalation that implied I was being dramatic. What are you talking about? You told people my daughter stole? My mom's voice sharpened, shedding the sweetness like a snake shedding skin. She stole Belle's shoes, Sarah. How do you know? She couldn't find them, my mom said, as if that was irrefutable forensic evidence. And then we found them at home in the corridor. I blinked, staring at the phone. In the corridor. Yes, my mom said. Right there. That doesn't prove anything, I said, trying to keep my voice from rising into a scream. Maybe Belle left them there. Maybe she forgot them. Maybe they fell out of her bag. My mom made a small scoffing noise. Belle wouldn't do that. Belle is responsible. So you don't actually know, I said, the realization hardening into fury. You don't actually know my daughter stole anything. You have no witnesses. You have no video. You have a pair of shoes in a hallway. My dad's voice came on the line now from the extension, low and irritated, the voice of the patriarch disturbed from his evening peace. We know, Sarah. We know what kind of jealousy she harbors. No, I said, cutting him off. Into you assumed. And you destroyed her life over an assumption. My mom's tone shifted. Not defensive, not guilty, righteous. It was the tone of a martyr explaining the burden of her holiness. "Sarah," she said, like she was explaining something simple to a slow child. "Even if she didn't steal, she still needs to learn respect. She needs to learn that actions have consequences." I went still, frozen. "What did you say?" "She needs to learn respect," my mom said again, calm as ever, satisfied with her logic. Across the table, my daughter had stopped eating. Her hands were tucked under her thighs, like she didn't trust them not to shake. She was watching me, reading the horror on my face. "You called her school," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "We told them what happened," my mom replied. "They needed to know." It's a character issue." "You didn't know," I said. "You assumed." My dad's voice cut in, flat and final. "We handled it. It's done." I swallowed, the taste of bile rising. "Did you even ask her what happened before you started telling people? Did you give her a chance to explain?" A brief pause. Then my mom said, sharper now, losing patience, "This isn't a courtroom, Sarah. We don't need evidence to know what's going on in our own house." "No," I said. "It's her life. It's her reputation." My mom didn't soften. Even if she didn't take them, the intent was there. She still needed consequences. I ended the call. The kitchen went quiet. The hum of the refrigerator seemed deafening. My daughter looked up at me like she was waiting to see what kind of world this was going to be. Was it going to be the world where Grandma was right? Or a world where truth mattered? I set the phone down and nodded once. They had turned 1 week into a weapon, a bludgeon to beat a child into submission, and I was done letting them use it. They didn't know it yet, but soon I would be making a call. And this call would change everything. The respect obsession didn't start with a missing pair of shoes. It didn't start with my daughter. It started with me. I didn't understand that for a long time. Or maybe I did, but I didn't want to look at it directly. When you grow up in a family like mine, you learn how to make yourself small in ways you don't even notice. You learn to occupy less space, to breathe shallower. My sister Vanessa was always the favorite. I couldn't have told you why if you'd asked me at 8 years old. And I just knew it the way you know which side of the bread has the butter. There's a moment I still remember, lodged under my skin like a splinter. We were at the dinner table. I was maybe 11. My dad asked something simple, like how school was going. I answered, not loudly, not rudely, just answered. My dad cut me off mid-sentence, his fork clattering against the plate. "Don't interrupt the silence," he'd said. I froze, confused. I had been asked a question. I was answering it. A few minutes later, Vanessa interrupted my mom to tell a story about a boy she liked. My mom laughed, delighted. "She's so confident," she beamed, "so spirited." I remember sitting there with my hands in my lap, staring at my peas, realizing the rules changed depending on who was speaking. The law was fluid. That pattern followed us into adulthood. Vanessa got celebrated. I got managed. Vanessa got excused. I got corrected. Vanessa was the protagonist. I was the supporting character with no lines. And when I got divorced, I needed help. Not because I wanted to cling to family, but because life is expensive, and childcare is real, and sometimes you're just trying to survive without collapsing on the kitchen floor from exhaustion. My parents offered support. They offered it loudly, publicly, like they were saints descending from the heavens to aid the poor. And because I wanted my daughter to have family, to have roots, I accepted. Then my daughter grew older, and the pattern shifted to the grandchildren. Vanessa's daughter, Belle, became the new center of gravity. You could feel it in the way my mother's voice softened when she said her name, melting like butter. It's in the way my dad showed up early for Belle's events and late for ours, and you could see it in the way my parents reacted the first time my daughter outshined Belle. It happened at the dance studio results day. It was the school run. The girls were lined up in their leotards, shivering slightly. The coach read out placements. My daughter got a better spot than Belle, not because anyone handed it to her, but because she earned it, because she worked, because she practiced until her legs shook and her toes bled. I expected for a brief, naive moment that my parents might be proud, that they might see her. Instead, my mom leaned close to me, her perfume cloying, and whispered, "Don't rub it in. Belle is sensitive. We have to protect her spirit." Vanessa nodded like that was completely reasonable. "Just tell her to be humble. And we don't want her getting a big head." Nobody told Belle to be gracious. Nobody told Belle to work harder. They only told my daughter to shrink, to dim her light so Belle wouldn't have to squint. And then there was my grandfather, my mom's dad, the only adult in my family who made me feel like we were allowed to exist as ourselves. When my daughter practiced in the living room, he'd sit in his armchair and watch the whole routine like it mattered, like he was watching the Bolshoi. He'd ask her questions about what she was learning. He'd praise effort, not just attention. He treated her like a person, not a prop. He died 3 years ago when my daughter was 9. After the funeral, amidst the lilies and the black coats, I asked my parents if I needed to sign anything regarding the estate. My mom waved her hand like paperwork was an annoying mosquito. "No, we're handling it. Don't worry about paperwork," she said, dabbing at dry eyes. "It's taken care of. You just focus on whatever it is you do." My dad added, "Trust us. It's handled." And because I was grieving and exhausted and trained since birth not to challenge them, I accepted it. I didn't know then what I know now. I didn't know that when my parents say handled, it means controlled. I didn't know that the week I left my daughter in their care would be the week they decided to teach her respect for a crime she didn't commit. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in bed listening to the house settle, listening to my daughter's uneven breathing down the hall, and thinking about how quickly a child's world can be destroyed by adults with nice smiles and community connections. The next morning, I did what mothers do when panic turns into cold, hard purpose. I moved. I called the coach. I called the school principal. I called Sophie's mom. Each call felt like hitting a wall covered in polite, velvet-covered bricks. "Oh, we're so sorry," the coach said, voice dripping with professional sympathy. "We understand you're upset, but we have to consider the safety of other children. Theft destroys team cohesion." "Your parents seemed very sure," the principal told me. They were quite adamant about the incident. It was amazing, actually, their concern for moral rectitude. How "very sure" is apparently a substitute for proof. How conviction can masquerade as truth. My daughter sat on the couch, hoodie pulled up over her head, staring at nothing. She flinched every time my phone rang. That's when I realized explaining it calmly wasn't going to fix this. Being nice wasn't going to fix this. I needed someone who spoke the language of authority, someone official, someone who didn't care how charming my mom could be at the church bake sale. So I called my grandpa's former lawyer, Mrs. Sterling. When he was alive, he used to praise her. Said she was a shark, but a shark that swam in your direction. "She can fix any problem," he'd say, "as long as you tell her the truth." I made an appointment for that afternoon. She was a woman in her 50s with sharp, intelligent eyes and a calm voice. The kind of calm that doesn't come from peace. It comes from experience. And it comes from having seen the worst people do to each other and knowing exactly which form to file to stop it. I brought my daughter with me, not to traumatize her with legal talk, but to show her that she is not powerless. To show her that when someone lies about you, you don't just take it. You fight back. Adults don't get to destroy her and call it discipline. My daughter sat beside me, hands folded in her lap, trying to look brave. She had that tight, careful posture kids get when they're afraid of taking up space. The lawyer listened to my story without interrupting. She took notes on a yellow legal pad, her pen scratching rhythmically. When I finished, she nodded once. Accusing a child of theft without proof and spreading it through school channels is serious, Mrs. Sterling said. It's defamation, technically. Though with family, it gets messy. But the damage to her reputation and her standing in school is tangible. I exhaled, a breath I felt I'd been holding for 24 hours. So, we can do something? Yes, she said. We can. We can send cease and desist letters. We can demand a written basis for the school's decisions, asking specifically why the dance team has kicked her out based on hearsay. And we can warn your parents that continued false statements have legal consequences. My daughter looked up at that. Consequences? The lawyer turned to her, softening her expression just a fraction. Yes, people can't just say things that aren't true and hurt you. The law protects you too. Then she turned back to me. Do your parents handle anything official for your daughter? Guardianship papers? Accounts? I frowned. No. I have full custody. The lawyer's eyes narrowed slightly, like she'd just heard a note that was out of tune. Then who is handling the trust? I blinked. What trust? She looked at me for a long moment, assessing. The trust your grandfather set up for her. My skin went cold in that specific way it gets when the world tilts on its axis. There is no trust, I said, because I truly believe that. My parents said there wasn't anything. The lawyer's expression didn't change, but something sharpened behind her eyes. I'm surprised you don't know about it. Your grandfather was my client for 30 years. He was very particular about planning. He set up trusts for all the grandchildren. My mouth went dry. You're sure? I drew up the papers myself, she said. I'm sure enough to investigate, but I want to be clear. It's possible your parents are the trustees, which means we'll have to go through them to request documents and accounting. I felt something in me shift, like a door opening to a hallway I didn't know existed. A dark, dusty corridor full of secrets. The lawyer continued, practical, efficient. We'll send 2 things. First, a formal request for trust documents and a full accounting of funds. Second, a letter demanding that they stop spreading claims of theft without proof. My daughter watched her with wide eyes, like she couldn't believe adults could talk to other adults this way. Like she was watching a wizard cast a spell. After the meeting, I did what I'd promised my daughter I'd do. I showed up for her. I went to the school. And I sat across from people who smiled politely and tried to tell me that concerns had been raised. I kept my voice steady. You don't have proof. You can't punish a child based on gossip from her grandmother. Where is the police report? Where is the confession? I watched them flinch when I used words like attorney and liability. I watched the color drain from the principal's face when I mentioned discrimination and due process. And when my daughter came home from one short attempt at school, looking like she'd been scraped raw, shaking from the whispers in the hallway, I took her for ice cream. Not because ice cream fixes defamation, but because sometimes you need to remind a child that there is still sweetness in the world, that the flavor of strawberry still exists even when everything else tastes like ash. In the car, I spooning melting sugar into her mouth, she said quietly, Do you think people will ever believe me? I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. They will, I said ferociously, because we're going to make them. 2 days later, my lawyer mailed the letters, and then my parents called. My mom's voice was sharp before she even said hello, vibrating with indignation. This is how you treat family? You send a lawyer? A lawyer, Sarah? I kept my voice calm because that calm is a weapon. It unbalances them. Answer the letter, Mom. My dad came on the line, breathless with rage. If you wanted documents, you could have asked. We didn't hide anything. They aren't for you anyway. They aren't for you, my mom snapped. You didn't inherit anything. Those documents are for us to manage. You told everyone my child was a thief, I said. I cutting through their noise. You didn't give me the courtesy of a private conversation. You went nuclear. You don't get to demand privacy now. My mom's tone went syrupy. the way it does when she's trying to make me feel unreasonable, gaslighting me in real time. We're busy, Sarah. We have lives. We do so much for the community. We don't have time for your drama. My daughter is 12, I said, and my voice finally cracked, the emotion bleeding through. And you destroyed her life in a week. You took her joy. She should learn respect, my mom said again, like it was a prayer, a mantra to ward off guilt. I swallowed. Answer my lawyer. My mom hissed, a sound like a kettle boiling over. If you do this, you're not family. We will cut you off. I paused. The silence stretched, heavy and final. Then I said quietly, You stopped being family when you decided my daughter deserved to be called a thief to cover up for your favorite. I hung up. And I meant it. They didn't respond right away. Of course they didn't. People like my parents don't like paper trails. Paper trails don't care how charming you are at church. Paper trails are cold, hard facts. Instead, the town did what towns do. It talked, and then it posted. My daughter came into the kitchen one morning, holding her phone like it was burning her hand. Her eyes were red, rimmed with sleeplessness, but her face was frozen. The way it gets right before tears, that terrible stillness. Mom, she said, voice small. Look. She handed me the phone. There was a post on the local community Facebook page. Someone I vaguely recognized. Someone who had probably smiled at me in the grocery store last month. The post was long, dramatic, full of moral outrage. It was about my daughter being a troubled youth, about me being a mother who refuses to discipline, about how I was using fancy lawyers to threaten honest, God-fearing grandparents. Comments stacked underneath like bricks in a wall of hate. She stole, and now her mom is suing everyone. Typical. Kids like that need consequences, not lawyers. Sarah always spoiled her. I saw this coming. If she stole, punish her. Imagine defending theft. She's teaching her daughter to commit crimes and play victim. My hands went cold. I felt physically sick. My daughter whispered, They think it's true. Everyone thinks it's true. I swallowed. I know. She swiped again and showed me another screen. A group chat. Kids from school. Her name in the chat like it was a joke. Thief, liar, freak. Someone had written, Don't let her near your stuff. Someone else. Her mom is crazy. She's suing the school. My daughter's breathing hitched, a jagged sound. I didn't do anything, she said, like she was trying to convince the air, the walls, the universe itself. I know, I said. And then I did the only thing I could do in that moment. I pulled her into my arms, held her tight, and let her cry into my shirt while I stared at the phone and felt something in me harden. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was resolve. It was steel. They were trying to break her again, this time with a crowd. My daughter didn't go to school that day, or the next. She kept saying, My life is ruined. Like 12 is old enough to feel the finality of social death, but too young to know it isn't permanent. I took screenshots. I documented every post, every comment, every call. I sent everything to the lawyer. The lawyer replied simply via email. We will add this to the complaint. Do not respond publicly. We will proceed. Then a flicker of light in the dark. A private message popped up on my daughter's phone while we were sitting on the porch. It was from Belle. Can we talk? Are you in school? My daughter stared at it like it might change if she waited long enough. Her thumb hovered over the screen without touching anything. She didn't type. She didn't even blink for a second. The typing dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Another message followed. Can we meet anyway? Alone. My daughter's shoulders lifted like she'd braced for a hit. She let out a slow breath through her nose. She finally looked at me, eyes glassy and flat at the same time. What do I do? She asked, barely audible. We don't do anything alone, I said. If she wants to talk, it's where I can see you. We control the environment now. She nodded once, stiff. I called the school and told them we were coming by to pick up assignments since she'd been home. It was a pretext, but a valid one. At the front office, my daughter kept her hood up and her hands hidden in her sleeves. The receptionist's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. It was a tight, polite mask. And then Belle appeared near the hallway, lingering by the trophy case like she'd been waiting for us to walk in. She saw my daughter and stopped. Her face flickered, pale, then flushed, like she couldn't decide whether to run or speak. And guilt is a heavy coat to wear when you're 13. "Can we talk?" Belle asked, quiet. My daughter nodded. Belle's eyes slid to me, fearful. "Alone?" "You can talk where I can see you," I said firmly. "By the glass doors." Belle hesitated, then nodded. They walked a few steps down the hall and stopped near the glass doors, still in my line of sight, but out of earshot. As they started walking, I saw my daughter slip her hand into her pocket. At the time, I thought it was just a nervous habit, seeking comfort in the fabric. They talked for a minute, maybe two. Belle kept twisting her bag strap, looking at her feet, then at the ceiling, anywhere but at my daughter. My daughter barely moved. She stood like a statue, listening. Then my daughter turned and walked back toward me. Her eyes were wide and glossy. Her face looked like it had lost all its color, drained white. "She confessed," she said quietly. I kept my voice even. "Confessed what?" My daughter swallowed hard. "I recorded it." "You did?" She nodded quickly, pulling her phone from her pocket. "Before I walked over, I pressed record. Because nobody believes me. I needed proof." We went home immediately. At the kitchen table, she set the phone down between us. Her finger trembled when she hit play. Belle's voice came through, tinny and tight, rushing fast. "I couldn't find them. I was panicking, okay? Mom was yelling about the time, and Grandma was staring at me, and I said you took them. I didn't mean to. It just came out." Then her voice dropped, breathless. "And then I found them later. They were with my stuff at home, deep in the bag. I think I forgot I packed them." A pause, breathing, Belle trying not to cry. "I wanted to tell people," she said, "but Grandma told me not to." My daughter's head snapped up at the recording, reliving the shock. Belle kept going, voice smaller now. She said it was already done. She said if I told, everyone would think I was a liar. She said it would teach you respect anyway, and that I shouldn't tell anyone. But now everyone hates you, and I feel sick. I didn't mean for any of this. The recording ended. My daughter stared at the phone like it was both a lifeline and a weapon. She whispered, "So they knew. They knew the whole time." I reached across the table and covered her hand. Her fingers were cold. "Yes," I said. "They knew." She didn't go to school the next day either. I didn't force her. I couldn't. A few days later, the lawyer called. "Sarah," she said, her voice serious, stripped of any pleasantries. "We received documents. Your parents finally responded, after some legal pressure." "Yes?" She didn't start with feelings. She started with facts. "There is a trust," she said, "funded at about $43,000 when your grandfather died. It was an investment account." "Okay." "It includes annual distributions for education and activities, dance, music, sports. A larger amount becomes available at 16, and the remainder at 18. I swallowed. My daughter never got anything. We paid for every dance class, every shoe, every costume ourselves. "No," she said. She didn't get it. "Then where is it?" "Your parents, as trustees, took money out," Mrs. Sterling said, her voice dry. They labeled the withdrawals as advances or loans. "About $18,000 over the last few years." A beat. The silence hummed. "None of it was repaid," she added. "Why would they do this?" I asked, but the question felt rhetorical. I knew why. Entitlement, greed, the belief that they owned us. "There's one more thing," the the lawyer said. In the trust, there's a clause, a specific provision your grandfather put in. A clause. A character clause. Or a misconduct provision, she explained. It allows the trustees, your parents, to withhold or reduce distributions if the beneficiary is convicted of theft or another serious offense, or even if there is a formal finding of dishonest conduct within the family or school, or if the trustees decide a distribution would be unsafe or inappropriate due to character flaws. The words lined up with everything my mother had said. She needs to learn respect, consequences. Suddenly, they didn't sound like discipline. They sounded like a strategy. They sounded like a heist. So they tried to brand her a thief, I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. The lawyer's voice stayed careful. This smear campaign alone probably wouldn't trigger it fully without a paper trail. But if they got her kicked out of school activities, if they got a record established, it could be the start, I said. They were building a case to cut her off. Yes, she replied. A pattern. Something that makes a later accusation easier to push into an official record. But if she's a known thief, withholding the money becomes justifiable under the terms of the trust. I lowered myself into a chair. My daughter looked up from the table, not asking what was said, just watching my face like she could read the answer there. If it ever did get official, I asked, what happens to the money? It doesn't disappear, the lawyer said. It follows the trust structure. It goes to alternate beneficiaries. My mouth went dry. Who? Potentially your parents, if they outlive the trust term, she said, or another named branch of the family. Vanessa's children. I turned and looked at my daughter, 12 years old, shoulders hunched, learning how quickly adults can decide who you are for a few $1,000s. Send me everything, I said into the phone. I want it all. I will, the lawyer replied. And Sarah, we have the recording? Yes. Good. We're done asking. I hung up and stood there for a second, phone still in my hand. My parents hadn't just punished a child. They'd been setting a trap. They were trying to steal her future to pay for their present. And they didn't know it yet, but they were the ones standing on the trapdoor. By the time everything caught up, the story had already changed. The assistant principal didn't interrupt when I played the recording of Belle. He didn't nod. He didn't frown. He sat perfectly still, hands folded on the desk, eyes fixed somewhere just past my phone. He listened to the sobbing confession, to the revelation of my mother's manipulation. When it ended, he didn't look at me right away. He reached for a legal pad. I tore off the top sheet, the one with the notes about my daughter's behavioral issues, and slid it into a folder without reading it. Then he said, "We'll need a copy of that. Not, can we? Not, if you don't mind." That's how authority actually works when it realizes it has messed up. Quiet, sudden, and allergic to embarrassment. Within days, my daughter's record was corrected. Not announced, not apologized for publicly. Institutions rarely do that, but corrected. The school activities office followed suit. The dance coach called her back onto the team with the kind of overly bright voice people use when they're trying very hard not to admit they were wrong. "We'd love to have her back," she said. "It seems there was a misunderstanding." "A lie," I corrected. "There was a lie." Once the adults stopped treating rumor like evidence, and the kids followed. The group chats went quiet. The posts stopped getting traction. A few friends reappeared, awkward, shuffling their feet, but sincere. "Sorry," Sophie whispered at the lockers. "My mom said I couldn't." "It's okay," my daughter said. She was gracious, more gracious than I would have been, but she stopped walking like she was waiting to be shoved. Belle switched schools before the semester ended. No explanation, no goodbye, just absence. Small towns love closure as long as it doesn't require accountability. My parents pulled her out, claiming the school wasn't a good fit. Then came the part my parents assumed would never see daylight. The trust. The accounting was brutal. My parents, trustees by title but thieves by behavior, had been helping themselves. The $18,000 hadn't gone to admin fees. It had gone to a new roof for their house. It had gone to a vacation. Some of it had even gone to Vanessa and Belle, paying for her dance camps, her costumes. One grandchild's future used to pad another's present. Mrs. Sterling was merciless. She filed a petition for their removal as trustees for breach of fiduciary duty. She demanded repayment. They didn't have the money. They spent it. They asked Vanessa for help. Vanessa, the golden child, the beneficiary of so much favoritism, declined. "I can't get involved," she told them. "I have my own family to think about." So they sold the house. The same house where my mother had lectured a 12-year-old about respect. The same living room where my father had nodded along while lies hardened into facts. They sold it to cover the debt to the trust and the legal fees. They moved into a rental, a small apartment on the other side of town, the kind of place they would have once described as temporary or sad. The money went back into the trust. The balance was restored. The trusteeship was changed. I became the one signing off. My daughter can't touch it yet. She doesn't need to. What she needed was protection, not spending power. She needed to know that her grandmother couldn't rob her twice, once of her reputation, and once of her inheritance. The social fallout was quieter than the accusations, but far more permanent. Invitations stopped. Calls went unanswered. People who had been very comfortable condemning a child became suddenly busy when the truth came out. It's hard to look someone in the eye when you know you participated in a witch hunt. I went no contact, no announcement, no final dramatic confrontation in the rain, just silence where entitlement used to live. I blocked their numbers. I returned their letters unopened. My daughter still has days where she remembers. Days where certain hallways feel longer than they should. Days where she wonders if people are whispering. But she knows now that the truth doesn't need volume to be true. It just needs proof. And the people who wanted her to learn respect taught her something else instead. They taught her that adults can lie. They taught her that family isn't blood, it's behavior. And they taught her that accountability eventually arrives. It might take a car ride, a recording, and a shark of a lawyer, but it arrives. And unlike them, and it never knocks politely before kicking the door down. So tell me, did I go too far by exposing them and forcing the sale of their home? Or did I not go far enough? Let me know in the comments, and if you want more stories like this, subscribe.